All right, that's our little Clemson Tigers. All right, you walk in, you return to 15 starters, which is big. You come off the 11-1 season, right? You did get whipped up by Spencer Rattler, and the boys came to town when you had a chance to go to the playoff. All right, but what have you added, right? You added Garrett Riley, right? Who, when it comes to offensive systems, hey, look at me when I'm talking, dude. That's so frustrating. Coming to a lot of offensive systems, Garrett Riley can come in and fix a lot of problems. Just came off a playoff run with TCU, and then you saw what they did on the offensive side of the ball. What's the big thing for Clemson that you don't have to worry about that you worried about last year? You know who your guy is at quarterback, right? And that's Cade Klubnik. You bring back who? Will Shipley, who's one of the best backs, if not the best back, maybe behind Blake Corum, in the nation. But let's talk about up front. You're returning a lot of your starters up front, which is big, especially with a new quarterback coming in, a young quarterback. What piece are you missing? That's the left tackle. 3-year starter getting out of there. You just went to the NFL. But you do have a couple guys with some playing experience that can come in and fill that void. But what's been the big thing about Clemson when we're used to seeing Clemson make deep runs, right, is explosive players at the position of the receivers, right? And you haven't seen that. You're bringing back Antonio Williams, who was your leading receiver last year, but you're going to have to rely on a couple of young guys to come back and bring back the explosiveness to Clemson offense. And obviously Garrett Riley is going to be a huge part of that, especially pushing the ball down the field. But the mix is going to have to be there because Clemson, when it comes to turning the ball over, turned the ball over a lot last year, and you can probably point the finger at a young quarterback. DJU is gone. He's at Oregon State, so we'll see how that goes there. Let's go to the defensive side of the ball. You'll lose a lot, all right? You're probably going to lose maybe 3 first-round draft picks. We'll see how the draft orders out. But the thing about Clemson, they're returning a lot too. You're going to be one of the oldest units in college football, and especially up front, right? You're bringing all ACC player up front and 2 guys who had great years, right, but got injured missed more than 6+ games. You bring back all your linebackers, which is huge, especially on the inside. You have 2 ACC conference players coming back at the safety position. Corner, you're not young, so I would not be surprised if Clemson on defense will be another top 5 defense walking into the year, especially what's surrounding them in the ACC. Obviously, we're about Drake May, North Carolina. Florida State's got some good things going for them. But the big thing with me, the Clemson, is this. You're established at the quarterback position. You know who your guy is. 2, Garrett Riley can come and fix a lot of problems. You're not losing a lot up front. The receivers are going to be the biggest question at Clemson. We're used to seeing the Justin Rosses and these athletic freaks running around and just absolutely sniping balls out of the air. Trust Cade Klubnik. Trust Garrett Riley. Let your defense do most of the work and don't shoot yourself in the foot. Clemson, even after the year that was supposed to be a down year, you'll win 11-1. Right? Yeah, I mean, if that's a down year, then congrats, guys. It must be nice. But don't be surprised if you see Clemson back into the playoff talk at the end of this upcoming year.
So Cade Klubnik is going to be the starting quarterback. I agree with that. He's not necessarily proven, though, right? I mean,
no, I wouldn't say he's
just mean we
the
know
proven
who the starter.
He's the proven starter. Okay. And last year, you're mixing guys. You have 2 quarterbacks. You basically have what?
None.
You basically have none. And DJU, in my opinion, was a bust. For all the expectations coming out for DJU, he was a bust. But Cade came in and did good things. But still, the biggest move is who you got at receiver. Because we're used to Clemson having guys at receiver that rival Alabama, that rival Georgia, right? But then you have Garrett Riley, the fixer.
What do you think, Jake?
When I look at Clemson, I don't ever worry about Clemson's defense with the way they recruit, even though they're losing guys. I mean, I know you're losing Brian Breesy, but they've shown over time they're able to reload on defense. The thing when I look at Cade is it's one thing to have a guy that has played a couple years and you don't have a ton of confidence in going into the year, but you feel like he has potential. It's another thing to have a guy who went out there in his first year and showed flashes of brilliance and showed the reason why that you should think there's that potential. With DJU, all the potential that was talked about outside of a couple games last year through his whole career at Clemson was that he was in the same breath as Bryce Young and these guys that came in that quarterback class that were absolutely fantastic. JT Daniels, those guys all grew up playing against each other, and he didn't really live up to that. Cade Klubnik, I think, has that ability. All right, now, did he make some mistakes last year as a young guy going in big situations? Yes, but he also made some big-time plays. He has the experience. My thing with Clemson is, if Will Shipley, and this is what we've talked about, if Will Shipley is your most dynamic player on offense, Clemson is not going to do what Clemson has done in the past and what the new standard is at Clemson. Where are the Justin Rosses at? Where are the T. Higgins at? Where are these game breakers that when you line up against Bama, and I'm not just talking about the ACC getting through that. Clemson's past that right now. People are trying to fight for supremacy of the ACC with Clemson. They're at the top of that mountain. But if Clemson does not have the game breakers that can go out there and do it against Georgia, that can do it against Bama, that can do it against Ohio State, hell, they can do it against Notre Dame, they're not going to win the championship again. I don't care how good Cade Klubnik is, because you have to have those game breakers on the outside. Travis Etienne, guys like that. So until they get back to that type personnel, Clemson's not, they'll win the ACC or have a chance to. North Carolina with Drake May, we'll see. You know, Sam Hartman leaving Wake Forest, that's going to hurt you a little bit. But FSU, to me, I think is the best team in the ACC right now.
You've been saying that.
And I'm going to keep riding that horse. Now, with me, I'll go ahead and do Utah if that's all right. Unless you want to add something there.
No. Tell us about Utah.
Man, looking up this Utah team, and the low-hanging fruit is obviously Cam Rising, right? Cam Rising, and it seems like every quarterback in the Pac-12 that's worth their salt's returning. Bo Nix, even Jake Delore at Arizona. Obviously, you look at DJU going to Oregon State. Can he resurrect his career? But then Caleb Williams, the obvious one's going through Michael Penix at Washington. But you got to replace Clark Phillips on defense. There's a couple guys that I like, a couple guys I think that are going to continue to take that leadership role that we know Utah has defensively with Cole Bishop and Sione Vaki. Vaki's the nickel I really like. He's one of those nickels that can do a lot of things, which is like having a tight end that can block and catch. Those guys are harder to find. But having Cam Rising back is huge. Now, he tore his ACL. We know that. They're expecting him to be back for the opener at home against Florida. Cam has the experience, and nowadays with physical therapy, I think he's going to be fine. But looking at that wide receiver group on the outside, Brant Keithy at tight end, they have a guy who there's no way he cannot have a big year this year, because he may have the best name in all of college football. Money Parks.
Money Parks?
His name is Money Parks, and he plays wide receiver. Him and Devon Vele at wide receiver. I believe I'm pronouncing that right. Correct me if I'm wrong. Fact check me on that. Those are the two guys I'm expecting to step up. I know Brant Keithy at tight end is a stud. We saw what he's done. He's a proven guy. You do lose Dalton Kincaid, another stud you had. Really losing Clark Phillips and Dalton Kincaid hurts. Those are the two. And then on the offensive line, you got some new faces. But I think this Utah team is going to be one of the best in the country. I think Cam Rising will have a chance to win the Heisman this year, even coming off that ACL injury, because you do have some continuity in big places. Now, one thing about Utah that I thought I would never say in my life, special teams got to get better. Now, you brought in Becker, the field goal kicker from Colorado, who I believe was 11 of 13 last year, had a long of 49. He's consistent. But the punting game and overall special teams game for Utah is typically elite with Kyle Whittingham. And I was shocked they netted under 40 yards a punt last year, which you never see from Utah, really. They've got to get back to being a dominant special teams unit, because that can save you when one of those other two sides of the ball isn't playing well. And I think they have the personnel to do it. But this Utah team is going to go as far as that wide receiver room goes. And then the biggest sleeper in the Pac-12 to me at a skill position is a guy named Jaquindon Jackson. I'm just telling you guys, was a third-string quarterback for Utah. 6'2", thick, really good second-level runner. He, last 3 games at combined, had over 300 yards, really did well. I think he is going to be your lead back, and I think he may end up being one of the most underrated players going into the 2023 season that really breaks out. I like Utah a lot. I'm going back and forth on if I think they're going to make the Final Four, looking at that schedule.
How about win the conference?
Pretty interesting. That's a tough one too, man. I've got to really, when we do our schedule, our predictions for teams and how they're going to finish, like we do in all the Power 5 conferences, looking at that schedule matrix for the Pac-12 is going to be like trying to figure out the Enigma machine in World War II. I mean, I need Alan Turing and a huge computer.
And Southern Cal only needs to get moderately better on defense to be a playoff contending team, right? Last year they were so bad on defense, and they still were right there in a game against Utah to be able to make the college football playoff. So I don't know. I do love Utah. That smash mouth physicality they play. 2 of the greatest Rose Bowls I've seen have come from Utah games.
I'm ready for that Utah-Florida matchup.
That's going to be week 1, and that's out west, right?
Yep.
They came to the Swamp last year.
That'll be early. I'm really.
We'll find out. We'll find out a lot early.
Remember when people thought I was crazy when I picked Florida in that game during the offseason last year? Remember that?
I picked Utah, but you're not. Look, playing in the Swamp, you're never crazy to take
game 1.
I don't care if it's
remember what we said.
Remember
we said. I said that heat. You can practice in all the elevation you want. You can go to Mount Everest and do jumping jacks until your legs fall off. But that's a lot different than going down in that swamp heat, going down in that humidity, and Utah players were puking up red Gatorade halfway through the first quarter.
And they had the ball on
When
the
I saw
2-yard
that,
line
yeah.
with Cam Rising.
Still had a chance.
Turn the football over. Look, it's hard to win in the swamp, but I do love Utah. I want to talk about Wisconsin. One of the more intriguing teams this offseason with Luke Fickell coming in. Now, this is a full preview here because they don't start spring practice until tomorrow. And every spring practice for Wisconsin will be open to the public. A lot of people in Madison are really excited about that.
I don't like that.
And that was not the way it was under Paul Chryst. Let's see if that ends up being a positive or a negative. But a lot of the media personalities out of Madison are excited about that. Paul Chryst went 67-26 at Wisconsin. He went 43-18 inside the Big Ten and had 4 10-win seasons in his first 5 years. But what? No 10-win seasons in the past 3 seasons, right? So I was surprised that Paul Chryst was fired from Wisconsin. But after you were selling me on Jim Leonhard and saying, look, this move was made because Jim Leonhard is going to be the next head coach at Wisconsin. He played there. He's an NFL vet. He's a defensive coordinator. He deserves to be the head coach there. It was sort of a situation where a Peyton Manning, Andrew Luck situation with the Indianapolis Colts, right? You don't want to move on from Peyton Manning, but you have an opportunity to draft Andrew Luck #1 overall. That's how we were all feeling about Wisconsin. Well, Jim Leonhard doesn't even get the job. He's the interim coach, but they bring in Luke Fickell. You have an opportunity to hire a guy who also, Luke Fickell's head coaching record, 63-25. So almost the same as what Paul Chryst is, but has more momentum after leading Cincinnati, the first group of 5 team, to the college football playoff. So Jim Leonhard doesn't get the job and leaves at the end of 2022, says he's going to take the year off. He was in talks with the Philadelphia Eagles to become their defensive coordinator. Both sides mutually agreed to not go that direction. That's why this whole thing has been interesting to me. And then you bring in Phil Longo, the OC from North Carolina, the old school air raid style football at Wisconsin. This is going to be an entirely different thing than we've seen than controlling the line of scrimmage and playing smash mouth football.
Yeah, well, I think we're losing one air raid principle in Mississippi State with Zach Arnett. Because again, Mike Leach was the offensive coordinator. Yeah. Let's make no bones about it. But we're gaining one at Wisconsin. It's the landscape is nuts.
Air raid at Wisconsin is hard to even fathom. That's why right now, as we sit here on the precipice of spring practice, we have a lot more questions than we have answers. I don't know who is going to be the standout wide receiver for Wisconsin. I think it's going to be sort of by committee. I don't think you'll see a wide receiver catch for 1,000 yards necessarily, but let's see, does one of those guys step up? Offensive line, a lot of guys have experience, but I don't know, are splits going to get widened now that you go to the air raid? Are guards going to become tackles? Who's going to play center? Like things like that. Obviously at running back, you bring back Braylon Allen, who had 1,200 yards rushing as a freshman and a sophomore, double-digit touchdowns both of those seasons. You know what you're going to get there, so that's exciting. Wisconsin has a great running back. Surprise, surprise. But the quarterback position, Tanner Mordecai, comes in from SMU. And remember, he spent 3 seasons at Oklahoma before that. So he's a 6-year player here. 7,000, almost 8,000 yards passing with his time at SMU. But here's what's interesting. Nick Effers also transferred in from Oklahoma. This guy is taller. A lot of people say he's more physically gifted. Will he compete for the starting quarterback job, or will he at least serve as a solid backup to Tanner Mordecai here in year 1? Those are some questions that I have for Wisconsin.
Yeah, I think Mordecai, watching him at SMU, is such an underrated runner too. Like he's one of those guys that you don't realize how fast he is until he just ran by the safety, and you don't understand how that guy just ran for a 40-yard touchdown. Now I know the competition level at SMU wasn't what it's going to be at Wisconsin, but again, he's been at Oklahoma. It's not the competition level for this guy.
Yeah.
He could spin it. The thing about Tanner is he has got to be smart with the ball down the field. That's when he gets in trouble. He likes to take shots. I love that. It's like going out with your fun buddy at the bar who loves to take shots. It's great, but I don't want all of them.
And when you look at his mobility, Phil Longo, the last 2 quarterbacks he's coached, Sam Howell and Drake May. So you get a quarterback like Tanner Mordecai. I think Phil Longo will be able to get the most out of Tanner Mordecai, but can you piece the whole thing together? I think Wisconsin's defense will be good before Wisconsin's offense is good as you head into the season. But I'll say this right here about Wisconsin. You bring in Luke Fickell, and you already were in a good spot with Phil. Like it's so unusual to have a situation where you bring in a new coach where the stability was already there. Doesn't have to institute a lot of cultural changes. They need to set as their goal and the expectation to win the Big Ten West. We've said no one wants to claim the Big Ten West.
Who scares you? Northwestern doesn't scare you. Nebraska doesn't scare you. Minnesota probably would be be top. Iowa didn't scare me as long as Kirk Ferentz and his offensively dyslexic son are still there. Illinois. I would say Illinois and Minnesota. If I'm looking,
and Bielema used to be there.
Yeah. Aiden O'Connell's gone from Purdue.
Yep.
Jeff Brom is gone from Purdue and went to Louisville. Now I love the hire that they made. They hired Illinois' defensive coordinator at Purdue. So it's a Big Ten West, West kind of mashup. So it's going to be fascinating to watch that league. Man, my early vote, and I really want to go back and look at it. I want to do a deep dive on Minnesota because while I can't stand PJ Fleck, he has been really consistent. I do want to give him credit.
Also no Michigan this year for them, and you get the Buckeyes at home. But you know what's interesting? The Georgia Southern Football Eagles go to Madison this year. What happened the last time they went to a Big Ten West school? Spanked Nebraska around, said, hey, we're gonna get this win, GATA, and then head back to Statesboro.
That's exactly right. Hey, you too. Appreciate you guys checking us out. Do us a favor. If you haven't already, if you're brand new listening to us, go ahead and hit that notification bell, subscribe, hit that like button. It helps more than you can even know. Unless you work for YouTube, then you know exactly how it works. We appreciate you.